So nice to see all of you. Thank you so much for being here. And also to those of you who are on live stream, welcome. And just nice to see you. How's everybody? Have a good week since I've seen you last? All right, before we do anything else, please introduce yourselves to the people around you, to your right and to your left and in front of you and behind you. Please forgive me, I'm a little vocally challenged, and I want to thank all of you, some of you might be in the room, but I know on live stream, who have responded. It's been about 3 or 4 times now, and I'm so grateful over the years, and you really came through this week when I put out the call on Facebook that I was losing my voice, and I just really felt all that energy zapping me. So whether you were praying for me or a Reiki healer or whatever, I'm so grateful for that, and I've really felt it. So please forgive me. I have another talk tomorrow night at ABC, as some of you know, and I'll talk about that. So because of that, when we finish tonight, I won't be hanging around because I want to save my voice, okay? So please don't want to come across as rude. And I'm doing my best. You can hear me well enough, can't you? Okay. All right. Please join with me. Let's take a deep breath. We see in the middle of our mind a little ball of golden light. We watch this light as it begins to grow larger and larger until now it covers the entire inner vision of our mind. And we see for ourselves within this light a beautiful temple. And we see a garden that surrounds the temple and a body of water that flows through the garden. We see that the inside of the temple is lit as well by this same beautiful golden light. And here we are, for we have been drawn together by the power and in the presence of God. We devote our time spent together and all of our relationships to one another, to Him. And we pray that His most Holy Spirit be upon us, lifting us above and beyond the sorrows and limitations and fears of this world to the endless love and peace that lay beyond. And so it is. Amen. Tonight I want to talk about our own shadow side, character defects, ego, and so forth. You know, in the Course in Miracles, it says, my way is not difficult, but it is different. And that is true of these principles. They are not difficult, but they are radically different than the way we have been trained to think. And so what's difficult is getting over our resistance to practicing the principles. It's not that they themselves are difficult. So the ego's thought system, because it dominates and prevails within the world, and it's the thought system that we were brought up with from the time we were tiny. Very early in our lives, we instinctively go towards wrong-minded thinking. Wrong-minded thinking feels natural to us, and right-minded thinking feels unnatural. And right-minded thinking is thought of love and trust and faith in each other. And wrong-minded thinking is thought of fear and attack and defensiveness. Now, one of the things that is the wrong-minded approach of life, but which the ego specializes in, is the core belief that it's always somebody else's problem. Whatever we come up with in life that didn't work, it was always somebody else. It was always the other person in the love relationship, even though sometimes you pretend you're taking responsibility by saying, no, really, I understand my fault that I was attracted to that person, but really, even that's still a judgment on the other person. The one thing you come to realize in life is that, okay, it was a problem with work, it was a problem with money, it was a problem with health, it was a problem with relationship, it was a problem with whatever it was. And we tend to think that the problem has to do with understanding those various categories. But we know that life is far more fluid than that. Those categories are man-made. They're just ideas that we have. That the truth of the matter is, in every situation that didn't work, the common denominator was you. So the Course in Miracles says that you cannot bring light to the darkness. You have to bring darkness to the light. And he says, I cannot take from you what you will not release to me. So spiritual healing, which is emotional and psychological healing, is a kind of detox process. The stuff has to come up. It's painful, it's horrifying, it's embarrassing, it's humiliating to look deeply and to see your stuff. And sometimes one of the ways that the Holy Spirit, in fact, the primary way that the Holy Spirit heals us, is by taking a kind of magnifying glass and putting it up to us, because it would be a violation of our free will for God to just take our character defects away from us. So when we ask for healing in our life, what God does is to make our character defects very, very obvious to us, because he cannot take them away, but we can choose to give them up. I remember in that wonderful book, when James Redfield came out with his book, Celestine Prophecy, that wonderful part about control dramas. And he says that there are 4 major control dramas. I think it's interrogator, intimidator, aloof, and poor me. And he talks about how it's ways we suck energy from other people. And everybody has a primary one and a minor one, major and a minor, and you're so busted reading about that. But where we play games, where we have our shtick, where we have our racket, where we self-sabotage, because really we never hurt other people, usually, nearly as much as we hurt ourselves. Because when we lead with these parts of us that are not loving, that are not the truth of who we are, the law of cause and effect is such that we reap consequences. We reap what we sow. So it's not about you should be good. That's not the tonality. The tonality is not you should be loving, you should be good. It's more like just thought you might like to know. When you are a certain way, your life will work. And when you're not that way, your life will probably not work. And your ego will make it about the other people, right? So the Course in Miracles says that the primary thought system of the ego's, the primary thought in the ego's thought system is that the Son of God is guilty. And the primary thought system in the enlightened or spiritual thought system is that the Son of God is innocent. Now, you can leapfrog over a lot of analysis by just knowing that. So let's hold off on that for just a moment. How do we get so weakened to begin with? Well, you know, we talk here all the time. I point out we all had childhoods. And usually there's some level of childhood wound. So if a parent adored you in a certain place within you, then you tend to be natural with that adoration. Your parent or parent figure really saw the good in you, affirmed the good in you, so that feels natural to receive that. And so if your parent didn't see it, or some parental figure didn't see it or affirm it, then not only do you not know how to receive it, but that which is actually any person later in life who also doesn't affirm it feels like home to you. And sometimes it's not that the parental figure didn't see the good in us, it's that they just didn't teach us how to do life, just didn't model for us how it's supposed to be done. And so we saunter out into life just kind of not having the tools. So we all go through our own form of that, and that is what we are here to be healed of. The Course in Miracles says you're not perfect, or you would not have been born, but it is your mission to become perfect here. Now, I was reading an article once about how they train airplane pilots. And this article was saying that in the old days, and I'm sure still, of course, the airplane pilot is trained to understand all the laws of aerodynamics and how the airplane operates and all of that. I mean, obviously, they still are. But that the emphasis, the change, has been in the emphasis from understanding what's happening to knowing that all you have is 3 seconds, so you don't have to understand, just do this. That it's really not, that you don't necessarily, the pilot doesn't necessarily have the time to kind of figure out what's happening, so much as the pilot needs to be completely schooled in, if this happens, do this. You might not understand it at the moment, but do this. Does that make sense? So with spirituality, sometimes we try to figure something out with a kind of ego-based analysis. Well, if I understood where it came from, if I understood how I got this way, and we do a lot of that because the primary psychotherapeutic paradigm of our time has been, well, if I have an issue, I try to figure out how I got that way from my mother or from my father or whatever, which is an insight that can be helpful. But that of itself does not fix it. And in fact, that can even play into the poor me victimization thing of, I'm that way because poor me, because mommy, or poor me because of daddy. When in fact, as we say often, no matter where you got it, it's yours now. Once you're a certain age, and the universe holds you accountable. The universe doesn't kind of give points to you because, we understand your mother was an alcoholic. The universe doesn't work that way. The universe just works in cause and effect. Now, once again, I cannot take from you, he says, what you will not give to me. And stuff has to become up. The Course says you cannot bring light to the darkness. You have to bring darkness to the light. So when you invite God into your life, and in the 3rd volume of the Course in Miracles, it talks about this. It talks about the phases we go through. And it says that often, when we really get deep and real with a spiritual path, things seem to get worse before they get better. Now, they're not actually getting worse, the Course says. The Course says you were just anesthetized before. And now you're having to see it. In other words, you were running the same games that you're running now, but you were able to escape the consequences in whatever way you did. But you would always be still coming up against the same wall. And we see that. You see it in the relationship patterns that keep repeating themselves, the work patterns that keep repeating themselves, and so forth. And one of the reasons that intimate relationship is so painful is because it is the place where, because, that this is not a line from the Course in Miracles. I think it was Sandra Ray. It's certainly in line with the Course, which says love brings up everything unlike itself. That where there is the greatest light and the greatest possibility of love, that's often where your biggest gunk comes up. That the person that you would most wish not to see that part of you is the one that you show that part of you to. Now, that is the healing opportunity in love and in intimate relationship, but it's also why the over-casualization of intimate relationship is so self-sabotaging. Because this is holy work that's been done here. And the holy work is not only the ecstasy of the union and the communion, but the holy work is also the work of everybody's stuff coming up for review. So the Course in Miracles talks about how the ego seeks special relationships, and the Holy Spirit seeks holy relationships. Now, the word special in the Course in Miracles is not the way it's normally used, because usually when you think of special, you think of that as good. But specialness in the Course in Miracles is not a good thing, because we are here on this earth, the Course says, to learn to love as God loves, to think as God thinks. Because to think as God thinks is to love as God loves. And what that means is that when we think as God thinks and love as God loves, we are in alignment with the truth of who we are. God is not outside us. So if I'm thinking as God thinks, I'm actually thinking, as the Course would say, using my mind the way it was created to be used. So we were created, the Course says, we are thoughts in the mind of God. And we were created to receive the higher vibration of thought at every moment, and then to extend it outward. But our character defects, our shadows, our egos, are places where there's a malfunction, a kind of emotional muscle spasm. And in that moment, for the reasons we said, either I wasn't adored in that place, so I don't know how to receive adoration, so I'm afraid to give adoration, or I don't know how to do it, whatever. In that moment, you go into a kind of panic, and you don't know how to just be loving and feel safe, or, and it's really ultimately the same thing, you don't realize how beautiful you are. So you don't know that it's okay to just be who you are. But it is the same thing because somebody, some parent, something in your past didn't tell you you were okay as you are. So what happens is that in that moment, we flip, and there's a kind of wire that gets crossed. So instead of expressing our love, and psychologically, you will only feel safe to express your love with a person whose innocence you can see. Instead, we go like this. We go into defense and attack. And so what happens is that the ego is always tempting us to see the guilt in another person. So this is the deal. It's like with the airline pilot. You can try to figure this out, but life doesn't always give you time to figure it out. You know, those moments that matter the most come from out of the blue. When you think of the biggest mistakes that you've made You know, I know this in my own life. You know, you just think of, if only I hadn't answered that call. If only I hadn't, something in me knew I shouldn't have gone there that day. I knew I wasn't in the place to have that conversation. Or if only I wasn't ready when I saw that person, I wasn't up for it, right? Does that make sense? So you're not always given your biggest assignments when you're quote unquote ready for it. But that's also why, if you're a Course in Miracles student, doing the workbook exercise in the morning is so important. You know, doing your meditation in the morning is so important because it aligns you. And so when we are aligned with the thinking of God, we are, remember, it's an attitudinal muscle. That's what the spirit is. It's an attitudinal muscle. So the ego will be tempting you all day, every day, in every way, to see the guilt in someone. Because when I see the guilt in someone, I am by definition not seeing them as God sees them. Are you with me? But the same is true with specialness. If I think you're special, I'm also not seeing you the way God sees you, because to God, none of us are special. So those are the two ways we blow it in relationship, either by seeing guilt in someone or by thinking we need them too much because they're special, right? So what's happening is we think we need them to complete us because in that moment we are blind to the fact that we're pretty beautiful ourselves. But if I'm not seeing where I'm so beautiful myself, then I'm more likely to see the beauty in you at the expense of my own beauty. But not only that, since I'm not seeing the beauty in myself, I'm used to somebody who doesn't see the beauty in me. So this person I think I need because you're so special is probably someone who will not think I am. So once again, you can analyze all this, and there's some pretty good analysis out there. But it's like with the airplane pilot. What's really important right now, you're in the conversation right now. So in this moment, you might not be able to figure out your whole childhood in the next 5 seconds. Just know that your ego is going to work very hard in this moment, and it's very insidious. It is your self-hatred posing as your self-love. It will always have a good excuse for why you see guilt in your brother. And as you do that, and there is so much societal permission these days for seeing the guilt in each other, and a lot of it has a so-called spiritual face. So beware, right? The silver-tongued devil, right? So the idea here is just to know that as we pray, and the Course in Miracles says that prayer is the medium of miracles. So the Course in Miracles says that our good intentions are not enough. We all have good intentions. I mean, when I've made my biggest mistakes, I had good intentions. I can look at every mistake I've ever made in my life. I don't think I ever had bad intentions. But the Course in Miracles says your good intentions are not enough. Your willingness is everything. That's where you get into this, the attitudinal, the muscle. I am willing to see the innocence in my brother. I am willing to see the innocence in my brother. Now the ego says, if I am intent only on seeing the innocence in someone, then I am more likely to allow myself to be vulnerable in places where I should not be vulnerable. I am more likely to be taken advantage of. But the opposite is true. Because when you are thinking, first of all, God is not stupid. If there is a God, he is at least as smart as you are. And you don't have to worry that by accepting God into your heart, you will somehow lose IQ points or somehow lose the kind of psychological perspicacity that is so in vogue, right? You don't have to worry about that. The issue is when we are in alignment, we can own our yes, but we can also own our no, because sometimes love says no. Now, the Course in Miracles says only what you are not giving can be lacking in any situation. So think about that. Only what you are not giving can be lacking in any situation. So it goes back to that training. It's about you. No matter what the situation is, it's not about money, it's not about work, it's not about health, it's not about relationship, it's not about the other person, it's about you. Once again, that's not hard, but boy, that's different. And it's like, I could have sworn it was about him, right? And From a worldly perspective, his stuff was probably there. Because remember, relationships are assignments. So you were there to bring up their stuff, just like they're there to bring up your stuff. But the ego loves to monitor them. The ego loves to, as they say, and they take their inventory. And once again, that's where you get a lot of societal permission today, supposedly from people in our crowd, right? To name, they're a sociopath, or they're a narcissist, or they're an abortion, or whatever it is, right? There's a lot of that. Because that's a sly, and by the way, that might be a correct description. But that's not the point. That you're having that as a correct description, and yet concluding, therefore, that they are guilty just keeps you stuck in the pattern where you're going to be more of that. Because you will be attracted to more of that, because that is what you need to forgive before you can drop that pattern, because only in forgiving that can you then forgive the part of you that is still acting out in the way that makes them do that. So once again, it's like, okay, this is not about me. And this is not about them, this is about me. I am willing to see this differently. So when we say in the Course in Miracles that you are to wake up every morning and to say, dear God, use me. Use my hands, use my feet, use my voice. Let me have your eyes, let me have your ears. May I only see the innocence in my brother. May I only be an instrument of love. Now, the ego loves to make fun of that, oh, how quaint, or how it's all very, very nice. It's all very, very nice, but we need to be more psychologically sophisticated than that. No, that is the most psychologically sophisticated you can be. Because what you're realizing is that thought is so powerful. And all thought, the Course says, creates form on some level. Every thought we think, and there's only one of us here. There's really no place where your mind stops and mine starts. So we all subconsciously know everything. So you can get your behavior down and be nice. Have you ever had that? I've certainly had that, where I walked into a room and everybody was nice enough, but I could feel the barbs. You can just feel it. So when you're judging someone, they can feel it whether they're conscious of feeling it or not. And your thought is creating form, because you know what happens? No matter how much you try to act nice, you're going to betray yourself and show who you really are at some point or another, right? Now, miracles occur naturally, the Course says, as expressions of love. So the ego is saying, you can't be forgiving here, you can't be kind here. We go into situations, you hear people say things like, well, I don't know what's going to happen, we'll see. That's a really dangerous thought, well, we'll see, as though you have no control. That's really, talk about abdicating power in your life. This, well, we'll see, no. Stay in charge. Stay in charge. And so in any situation that we go into, and we say, I only want to be an instrument of love, I only want to see my brother's innocence, and I only want to be a miracle worker. I only want to be someone who in their space, in their presence, they feel from me that they have the invitation to be their best. Because if I'm affirming your worst, then I'm saluting your worst. And what I salute in you, you will rise to. Think about it from your own perspective. Who do you behave well around? I know I behave well around people who invite me to behave well. And who do I trip up around? People whose energy is just waiting for me to trip up, right? So to the extent to which we go into any situation, and our desire is to be a miracle worker there, you're not thinking about what you're going to get. You're thinking about what you're going to give, but remember, the Course says the teacher of God is generous out of self-interest. So you're not doing it to be a goody-goody. You're not, the word should doesn't belong here. It's not you should be nice, because then you'll go to heaven later after you die. No, it's you might want to consider being nice, because heaven or hell will be here within 15 minutes. Because you will know, either they're going to give it back to you, what you gave to them. So either the person you're going to be loving, and either they're going to be loving back, or if their stuff is such that they can't be, it won't even matter, because you're clear within yourself. Let's say you gave a loving no to someone because that was really your guidance to say no. Well, they might not be happy with it, but it's like a child. Good parenting doesn't necessarily mean you're going to do the thing that they want you to do at that moment. But you're going to feel within yourself okay about it. On the other hand, if we are not loving, in every moment, the Course says, every single instant, we are making a choice. You're making a choice consciously or unconsciously, whether your heart is open or your heart is closed. So if my heart is closed to someone, then even if they don't like slap back immediately, and even if my ego says, well, that's good because I told her what she needed to hear, you will feel ultimately, oh, I can't believe I did that. So the training of the Course is, so much contrary to some of the so-called wisdom of the world. How do I behave around this kind of person? That's very big these days. How do I behave around a narcissist? How do I behave around a psychopath? How do I behave around a sociopath? How do I behave around this? How do I behave around that? And it's all this wonderful ego feast that really is giving all our power away, for one thing, rather than realizing that you will know how to behave when your thinking is correct. Because thought is the level of cause. And everything we do is infused with the thinking with which we do it. Now, sometimes, you do fake it till you make it. Sometimes, they say in AA, you can act yourself into a new way of thinking more easily than you can think yourself into a new way of acting. Sometimes, you don't feel it yet. That's another problem with our society. We have developed this culture of, if I feel it, it must be the right thing, which is so patently absurd. I heard this woman who was working with teenagers once who said, what is it that you want? And then her second question was, what do you really want? What I want to eat the gallon of ice cream. What do I really want to lose weight? So sometimes our appetites do not serve us well. And that's something which is actually a crisis in our society. And we're seeing it played out right now. People are asking themselves, what has happened to goodness? What has happened to decency? What has happened to dignity? And we're seeing it played out way big in front of us. And we're all sort of horrified by it. But then on the other hand, it's making us look at the fact that where did the conversation about goodness and decency and ethics go? I mean, is it really what we've talked to our children about? I remember when I was a little girl, and there was that story, which obviously is a romanticized version, but it was about George Washington, and when he said to his father, "Did you cut down the cherry tree?" I think, "I cannot tell a lie." Well, maybe he could tell a lie. I don't know, but I remember, and we can make fun of it, but even, I saw Rose Marie died the other day, who was on the Dick Van Dyke Show. Many of us were brought up around programming that kind of showed you how functional people live. We had become so enamored of darkness. We had become so enamored of dysfunction. We had become so enamored of pathology, and we're getting it back big time. And for one thing, if kids grow up just around so much of the, whether it's television or movies or not seeing it modeled or not having it taught, then later we just become a society where, yeah, but that's okay, and it's really not okay. And we suffer when we are not our best. And so goodness has its power. Somebody sent me an article about Darwin, which I had read before about Darwin. Darwin was actually he was very much a philosopher, and he was not, this whole idea about survival of the fittest, and this Darwinian notion has been taken to mean that the fittest is the one who goes out there and is able to, be aggressive and get their needs met as they define them, etc. That's actually not what Darwin said. And what Darwin actually believed is very much in line with what the Course says when it says, the meek shall inherit the earth because their strength will take the place over. So what I have seen in my life, and none of this means anything unless it's practical. Don't believe it because I say it, don't believe it because anybody says it, don't believe it because the Course in Miracles says it, the Course would say. The Course would say, try it and see, look at your own life, and look at your character defects. And we're all adults in this room. So by now, I think it's reasonable to assume that we all know what our main racket is. We all know what our main character defect is. And if you don't, I'm sure your best friends could tell you. Okay? So what we do is the ego doesn't really want to look at it. But the first thing here to look at is it's causing you to suffer. It is what has produced, when you act that way, whatever your racket is, whatever that loveless pattern is, it's a loveless mental pattern that you went into not because you're bad, but because you're wounded in the ways we already said. It doesn't make you a bad person. You're wounded, the whole mommy, daddy, childhood thing, okay? Or whenever the abuse happened or whatever. So the issue is that's not getting you results. And that right there is something. Because like I said, your ego is your self-hatred posing as your self-love. And what you really see is when you were your best is when life worked. When you were finding guilt in others, when you were being intimidating, when you were being dishonest, when you were being whatever that thing is that you do that is your defect, did it create positive results for you? No. And it's something which is so obvious once you look at it. But once again, we have to see it because we have to give it up. But when you give it up, when you see what your stuff is, and at first you're afraid to look at it, but then when you do look at it, it's interesting, it's counterintuitive. You think that if you really look at that thing you do or those things you do that are always, come on, why do you do that? Why do you act needy? Why do you act controlling? Why do you act negative? Why do you act dishonest? Why do you go in victim? Why do you blame other people? Why do you get critical? Why do you get angry? Whatever it is. So you almost don't want to look at it because you're afraid you'll hate yourself and you want to love yourself. But you can't love yourself by pretending that's not there. And one of the things about looking at it is that in a weird and counterintuitive way, it almost helps you love yourself because you realize you had to be really hurt to have come up with that as a coping mechanism. You know, that has to be, you came up with that as a way of survival. You didn't know any better, and you probably came up with it at such an early age, and like I said, nobody had modeled that you're really beautiful and you don't need to do that, or nobody had modeled the way to behave that people who don't have that wound, how they behave. But until we do, and if you're trying to get rid of it, what we do in these special relationships is, you go into a relationship, because remember, the ego builds special relationships. And so the ego is looking for someone who is going to love you. So the ego says, therefore, I don't want them to see that part of me. And I'll try to control that part of me around them. You're not even telling yourself that. And they're doing the same thing. And not only are they trying to not show you their worst, because they're afraid you won't love them if they show it to you, but you really don't want to see their worst. You want to think you're dating Mr. or Miss Perfect, or married to Mr. and Mrs. Perfect, right? So everybody's posing. Everybody's posturing, and it's bound to stop working because it's false. It's not the truth. And the Holy Spirit is invested in your self-actualization. So the universe will not support your racket working forever. It won't support it. And the truth tellers will come into your life. Sometimes the people who love you the most are the people who just lay it down and tell you the truth about yourself, kindly. Right? And even if they don't, if you're not fortunate enough to have figured it out or to have somebody told you, the situation will by bringing it up. So the special relationship, that is where your ego will either leave the relationship in humiliation or you will be rejected by the person because they saw that part of you, which will only increase your humiliation. Or you will reject the other person because you saw them in that part of them that was unhealed. Now, the holy relationship is one in which we all understand that's what's going on here. And that's why the over-casualization of intimacy, the over-casualization of sex, etc., is such a self-sabotaging maneuver. Because what it's trying to do, the ego says, if our bodies join, then I will know that we are united. But you cannot be united just by the body. And if sex, for instance, is a substitute for real communion rather than an extension of real communion, it will end up causing harm rather than healing. Because what's going to happen is that level of vulnerability will be there, but then you will not be safe, and the other person will not be safe when in fact that stuff comes up, which it inevitably does. That's why the journey through our dark stuff is part of the sacred journey. Denying where we're off is not the sacred journey. The sacred journey is sometimes taking a really good look at ourselves. Now, we're living at a time where it's a very high-stress time in the country. It's a very high-stress time on the earth. So it is tempting to want to just cocoon and to put a bubble around yourself and try to escape the craziness going on out there. That won't work, because we have to show up to transform what's going on, or it will only get worse. And if it gets too bad, there is no amount of protection that you can surround yourself with. Are you with me? But on the other hand, if we don't do this personal work, since everything we do is infused with the consciousness with which we do it, we cannot go out there and be transformers of anything going on out there unless we ourselves are going through our own internal transformations. So that is the intersection, a very interesting intersection right now, between a great need for personal transformation and a great need for societal, political, cultural, economic transformation, and so forth. Martin Luther King said, we need a quantitative shift in our circumstances and a qualitative shift in our souls. So I invite you right now to think about one thing, could be two things, could be three things, I don't know, you'll know, that you know, yeah, I do that. It turns people off, it sabotages me at work. You know, we all have those things of, well, I haven't had the opportunity. I haven't had the opportunity, I haven't met the right one yet, or haven't had the right opportunity at work. But when we take a real honest look at our lives, we see how many opportunities we've had that we have blown. That you actually did have an opportunity there, and you actually did have an opportunity there, and it was the way you showed up. Am I right? It was the way, if we're honest with ourselves. And like I said, it's horrifying for a moment. And the Course in Miracles talks about the circle of fear that all of us have to go through. You know, but you see, okay, what was it in me? And you want to deny it because the ego says, no, it was the other person. And you get a lot of, your friends will tell you too. No, even if you had been perfect, you know, we feel sometimes like giving false comfort to each other is friendly. Being kind to each other and compassionate is friendly. But sometimes you're kind and compassionate enough to bear witness to the other person's agony while they're having to look at the humiliating fact of how they messed up. Does that make sense? That's sometimes the sacred issue in friendship and in relationship. There's nothing unholy about that. That is the holy work. And then you have to realize, as I said, it's not where you're bad, it's where you were wounded. And the child who originally developed that was doing it just to survive. And for a moment or so, it was how you survived. But what we have collectively manifest on the planet now is an expression of where we're stuck. And so you getting unstuck is a very, very important part of your capacity to show up to help the world get unstuck. So first of all, like I said, it's not like it's just you have stuff and the rest of us don't. We all do. And the Course says you wouldn't have been born had you been perfect. You know, this stuff, whatever it is, sometimes you see parental stuff, sometimes you want past life stuff. It's all quite fascinating, but the point is not ultimately just analyzing it, because analyzing it does not of itself release you from it. Going back to the airplane pilot. Now the Course says this is the way you do it. Know that no matter what anyone else does, no matter what anyone else says, no matter what else is happening, you are to interpret other people's behavior as one of two things. Either love or a call for love. So if someone behaves lovingly to you, it's easy enough to love them back. Those cases aren't hard. But let's say someone behaves unlovingly to you. Well, in that moment, it's going to be hard to see this. In that moment, it's going to be hard to see it. So train your muscle to carry you through, because in that moment, you're not going to see it. The truth is that in that moment that they're not being wonderful to you, they're going through their wound just like you go through yours. In that moment, they lost touch with the beauty in them. They lost touch with their innocence, which is their love. And so they fell asleep to who they are. That's all you have to know. So don't go into, she's being this way or he's being that way, or I know people like that, and that means he or she is an avoidant or addiction, whatever. Just know you override all that. You can talk about that later. That'll be fun. It's kind of like what's happening with us politically today. This is going to be major for historians 100 years from now. We don't have time to do the history right now. We just need to fix it. Right? So it's the same thing. You'll figure out later exactly what was going on. The point you just need to know now, how do I react now? If that person behaved with love, then love is the appropriate response. But if they are not behaving with love, even though your ego is going to say, the last thing you should do now is be loving. The last thing you should do now is be loving. But the Course in Miracles says, if that person is not acting lovingly, they have fallen asleep to the truth of who they are. If you base your reaction on the perception of their personality, which in this moment is their guilt, which means you are attacking them. Remember, the Course says, it is though a sword, you think you're dropping a sword on their head, but you're actually dropping it on yours because there's only one of us here. So you'll figure it out later. It's going to be very, your ego is going to scream at this. This is why you have to build the musculature. Just know, and you do it in silence in your heart first. We go into immediately, the ego says, what's the behavior? What's the behavior? What's the behavior? The training of the Course is center your thought into the holy instant. Dear God, I am willing to see this differently. I am willing to see that they are calling for love. They cannot find their love right now. But if I react to their guilt, I am falling asleep to their innocence, therefore I will fall asleep to mine, which means that my mistaken self will come into play, and then we're on that wheel of suffering. The ego says you can't be loving in this moment. Don't you see how they're acting? You can't be loving in this moment. This is absolutely unacceptable. You can't be loving in this moment. You have to set a boundary. You can't be loving in this moment. Now, by the way, maybe a boundary is appropriate. Maybe there is a level of accountability, whatever. But the point is where it comes from within you. And that cannot be faked, and that cannot just be behavioral. So it's the difference between, let's say somebody's behavior really is out of line. Okay, maybe it is. But they're in your presence because it's an assignment to see how you do with people whose behavior is out of line. Right? Now, if Jesus or any other enlightened master is in front of somebody whose behavior is out of line, they stay within their love, and so a miracle happens. But the ego would, because you're out of line, my temptation is for me to get thrown out of line. That is absolutely unacceptable, or whatever it is, which means you're out of line and you've just deflected a miracle. Now, it might be that in a very kind, loving way, the miraculous response would be something along the line of, that's out of line. See the difference? It's a tremendous difference. So you can't just say, what am I supposed to say? What am I supposed to do? That's why in the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus says to the disciples, I will tell you when you get there. So sometimes people will say, what is the behavior for this, or what is the behavior for that? That's not how the Course operates. The Course operates that each and every one of us has an internal teacher. Each and every one of us has, and it's the same internal teacher, and that it is as though each of us has a direct radio link to literally, the Course says, the voice for God. But there's so much static in the radio So it's like in AA when they use the term conscious contact. Once again, if you do the workbook in the morning, if you're a student of the Course in Miracles, which is the crux of the Course, the issue is, as the Course says, 5 minutes with the Holy Spirit in the morning will guarantee He will be in charge of your thought forms throughout the day. It's like an Olympic athlete or any great athlete, how they always talk about seeing the move before you make the move. Seeing in these days, it's what's our intention for this meeting? But that's a very corrupted, ego-based perspective. Because from a spiritual perspective, your intention is to be a minister of God, to be an instrument of love. That's all you need to know. Because if you are an instrument of love, by definition, you will, because you're in the space of the miraculous, the space of love is the space of the miraculous. So, for instance, we say here all the time, you can have the best resume in the world. You can have the best education in the world. You can have all the great stuff in the world. There's somebody else who's as good as you. People aren't going to give you a job. People aren't going to love you. Ultimately, all the things we say will make you lovable. They will want to hire you because they like you. At a certain point, you get your skill set together. At a certain point, they're going to hire you because they like you. They're going to promote you because they like you. I don't care how gorgeous you are, how fantastic you are, how handsome you are. Ultimately, they're going to want to be in a love relationship with you because they want to be, because there's something about the feeling there. So who we are is always the primary driver of what happens in our lives, not what we do. And until we are in line with the who, we don't know what to do because we're blind. When you are blind to your own innocence, you are blind to other people's innocence. And then you're just going to be exiled from the garden of a life that works, into chaos and suffering and neurosis and all that stuff. And your primary racket, your primary character defect, your primary ego pattern, whatever it is your default position. So don't avoid looking at it. So we have to own it. We have to say, I get that I do this. I get that I'm this way. And dear God, please show me how to be different. So it's not only take this away, it's not only take away the darkness, but show me how to dwell in the light. Like a lot of times when you say, well, if I don't act that way, you're acting that way because you don't know how to get your needs met acting the other way. You don't know the skill set of doing it right. You don't have the skill set of ethics. You don't have the skill set of impeccability. You don't have the skill set of people who weren't as injured as you were as children. You know that story I often tell about the woman who knows that she's blowing it in relationship by being jealous. And so she gets to the point where she knows, my husband has told me this has simply got to stop. And I really realize I'm turning off my husband. I'm going to lose my husband. I've got to stop this. But she doesn't know how to stop it because of her stuff with how her father acted with her mother or whatever. And the story I always tell is how, she goes into a party one night, and she knows that if she does this really clingy thing with her husband, I knew somebody once. It's interesting. Somebody that we all know, and he used to be married to a woman. This isn't who he's married to anymore. And he couldn't be at a meeting that we were all around without her, clutching onto him in such a way and throwing darts at anybody who wanted to talk to him more than 2 minutes. You could really see how, that couldn't be helpful in their marriage. So let's say this story of this woman, she knows that she's blowing it with her husband by being too jealous. And so she says, dear God, take this away from me. And I've had this happen in my life, not with the jealousy thing, that's not mine, but it's something else, where it's like, I don't know how to do it right. It's not just that I'm used to doing it wrong. I don't know what doing it right looks like. And the most amazing things happen because I've seen in my life where I'll just happen to pick up a book And it'll just happen to be talking about that. Or I will happen to look like the woman who has the jealousy thing. Will see how a woman who is not jealous behaves. And also we'll see how her husband is more attracted to being there because she's not clutching and repelling him that way. So as soon as we say, dear God, take this from me, I am willing to be different, the entire universe conspires to help you. Because remember, God reparents us. And, I see with my father, my father grew up in poverty, had a very difficult life. And also, I can look back as an adult woman and totally understand. I can totally understand their generation. I can totally understand the time he was in his life and career. I can totally understand his childhood and how tough it was, and his father. I got it intellectually. But I used to look at the way my father treated my sister's daughters. Because by the time my sister's daughters arrived, he was ready to be available to little girls. He was ready to be the adoring grandfather and the cherishing grandfather. And with me, there was always that little emotional distance when I was growing up. This kind of love and impressed, but just not the total adoration. I used to feel very jealous of my little nieces at that time. So we can understand that intellectually, but it's when you allow God to reparent you. And I used to feel, because my father's been dead many years, and I've felt, you even feel apologies from dead parents. And not that he had anything to apologize for. He didn't do anything wrong. It was a level of cherishing and adoration I just never felt. So what can happen when the Course in Miracles says you think you have many different problems, but you really only have one, and that is your separation from God. So when you reorient your sense of identity, that's really what we're talking about here. The Course says, enlightenment is a shift in self-perception from body identification to spirit identification. Your body has the history you have, the experiences you've had, the mistakes you've had, the successes you've had, the skills you've had, the skills you haven't had, the places where you've got it right, the places where you got it wrong. Yeah, that's life. And if you only base your sense of yourself on that, then you are perceiving yourself along the line of the crucifixion. How you have been crucified, how you're going to either act victim-y because you've been crucified, or crucify others because that's basically the mindset you believe in. And the Course in Miracles says you will be heir to the laws that rule within the world that you identify with. Or you can realize that's just this lesson plan. That's just the dreams I've had, the dramas that I have manifest. But in any given instant, and that's why in the Course in Miracles, the idea of the holy instant is everything. In this moment, if I just remember, and it's easier said than done, that's why you can't achieve it without, that's why the Course says that the workbook is the crux of the Course. You can know this stuff intellectually, but in that moment, just intellectual knowledge or your ability to analyze this is not going to free you. It's that the Holy Spirit literally does some alchemy in your brain and undoes those wires that got crossed. And as we devote ourselves, we do so much, we spend so much time analyzing the darkness. We don't spend enough time devoting ourselves to the light. An endless analysis of your darkness will not take you to the light. Owning the darkness, like I said, you can't bring the light to the darkness, you have to bring the darkness to the light. Owning it and putting it in the hands of God. Sometimes I was in one situation, and when I closed my eyes, it's like I saw Jesus with his hands in front of him. Just give it to me, give it to me, give it to me. Because give it to me means give it to the part of your mind that knows how to transform this. You don't know how. So as you have called to mind this part of you, not only, as I said before, do you probably know exactly what it is, but the second thing I'll say to you is, if you could have changed that, you would have done so by now. I remember things when I was in my 20s. Oh, by my 30s, that'll probably be gone. Oh, by my 40s, that'll probably be gone. What happens is this stuff gets, it's like plaque. You know, plaque on your teeth is the same as plaque in your heart, but it's plaque in your personality. And it becomes harder. I've talked about women, and I went through this as a woman, and I think women of my generation, it's like we had to claw to get into certain rooms. But then, once the society had changed enough that a woman really didn't have to claw to get into the room, you're in the room, I said, okay, I can take my claws off now. They become cemented on my fingernails. Mental habits, they become that. They're habits. It's not so easy to change sometimes. So it's not as simple as saying, oh, I know I do that. I'm not going to do that anymore. But it is about saying to God at a very deep level, I get it. And I get that I'm less of an aid to the world if I don't grow past this. And this isn't going to fix itself. It's like addiction, because that's really what all the drugs and alcohol and all that, it's just one form that the ego mind takes. It's not, the pattern is not going to change itself. There has to be a counterforce. And God is that counterforce. So in our meditation, I invite you to take advantage of the fact that you are in a room with other people. The Course in Miracles says ideas grow stronger as we share them. And in this petri dish of healing, you take it and you say, I am willing to give this up. And, let's be real clear. The ego would say, and probably in some of you right now, it's already saying, you really sure you want to give this up? Because we get some false prizes from your racket. You get some false prizes. And so the ego is saying, now wait. You really want to go into this, like if I'm just total love, that it'll all work out for me? So, yeah, it's to the ego, that's death. The ego says, wait, don't listen to this woman. She's saying, you'll be unsafe. Because to the ego, it is unsafe. The ego doesn't want you to go there because the ego, it is the ego's death. The Course in Miracles says love restores reason and not the other way around. So love is reasonable. And if you look back at the things you did when you were displaying that defect, it didn't work for you. It didn't make them like you. It didn't make them love you. It didn't make them hire you. It didn't make you well. But at the time, it seemed like a good idea. Are you with me? So the surrender into being who God would have us be is not surrender into our weakness, it is enter into our strength. And that's where the meek shall inherit the earth, because the strength will literally take the place over. You can afford to be love and love only. And the Course says there is a way to live on this earth in an egoless state. Now, I'm not there. I think I know one person that I've met somebody who I think is there, actually, in an egoless. Actually, you know who I think is there? I think Eckhart Tolle is there. He's really just, I think, and the Course in Miracles says, once again, like you, and I had said this before, you are not perfect or you would not have been born, but your mission is to become perfect here. So when you consider the fact that as loving as most people on the planet are, as good and decent as most people on the planet are, we are manifesting some collective horrors. We must, not only for our sake, but for the sake of humanity, really go for those last things. What happens is when you start to grow spiritually, you might notice that your stuff, your BS, your racket, your ego, doesn't have total control of your life the way it once did, but it has put itself in one room and it's locked in there. Does that make sense? Right? And it's got that one room barricaded. And you start living like, you know what, I can do without that room. Because my life is functional here and my life is functional there. And my life has gotten better here, and my life has gotten better there. So, okay, so there's that one piece of me that's just barricaded in that one room. But right now, the universe is invested So that one room is what the demon in there, because that's what demons are, loveless thoughts. It's barricaded in that one room, and the problem is that your deepest love is going to come knocking on that door. And you're going to self-sabotage in increasingly painful ways. So let's all together know that in the Course in Miracles it says, you're saying, how long, oh God, how long? God's saying, how long, oh Son, how long? He'll take from us, he says, the Holy Spirit responds fully to your slightest invitation. So you don't have to worry that I'm going to ask you to then tell the person next to you what you asked God to take away. This is just between you and God. And I always say here, on nights like tonight, when you've been praying with other people, really listen to yourself. Because the Holy Spirit works through your subconscious mind. So take yourself very seriously tonight. Okay. Thank you, Adam, for being here. Let's take a deep breath. And let's close our eyes. Having closed our outer eye, we open to the light within. And here we see the internal teacher by whatever form he appears to us. One sent by God to guide us, to redeem us, to heal us, to give us a new mind, to give us a new heart, and to give us a new life. We take this moment to think of certain situations that the Holy Spirit will show us now, where life did not work, where we were needy or codependent or critical or dishonest. Whatever we did, however we acted, in moments of fear, where we were not strong, and we allow ourselves to feel any shame, any embarrassment, any humiliation, any regret, any remorse. And we admit it to God. And we place in God's hands how we feel. Feeling like a failure, feelings of self-hatred, feelings of self-loathing, feelings of victimization. And the feelings that sometimes come up that things will never change. It's just how I am. I'm not built that way. I'm not strong. I wasn't taught how to do it right. My mother or father didn't love me, or whatever it was. And in this moment, we give to God all those feelings. And we accept that regardless of how we became that way, if it was not true love and power, then it was not how we were created. And dear God, we want the false self uncreated. We want the false self undone. We want the needy self undone, the critical self undone, the angry self undone, the dishonest self undone, the victim-y self undone. the game playing self undone, the dishonest self undone. Whatever this pattern, whatever this game we play, whatever this way of being we came up with unconsciously that then became this pattern, dear God, undo it now. For we are willing, for our sake and God's, to be the people He created us to be. You were not created weak, you were created strong. You were not created dishonest, you were created honest. You were not created to blame, you were created to bless. You were not created to be angry, you were created to be kind. You were not created to be critical, you were created to be forgiving. You were not created to be judgmental, you were created to be merciful. Accept yourself in this moment as God created you to be. Some will see an image of Jesus impressed upon your mind. And if that is the vision within your mind, rest within that space and allow His alchemy to rewire your perceptions. Whatever form, Jesus, light, God, angels, peace, whatever is happening within you now, allow this divine alchemical operation dissolve the thought forms, the mental and emotional and behavioral patterns of lovelessness that have punished you, by which you have betrayed yourself, to now fall away. Allow yourself to feel stuck energies, whatever form, falling from your body, emanating from your cells, falling away, dissolving into the nothingness from whence they came. Allow yourself to feel the Holy Spirit working on you and in you. And now allow yourself to feel who you really are. So long cowering beneath the weight of your false self. Now rise in response to the call from God Himself. The innocent you, the loving you, the impeccable you, the ethical you, the powerful you, the you that is really you. And if you feel you do not know how to inhabit this space, simply be willing. As we now call angels to come upon you and to surround your most holy head. And through the grace of God, you shall be lifted up. And where you have been weak, you shall now be strong. Where you have been poor in spirit, you shall now be rich in spirit. Where you have been afraid, you shall now be courageous. Where you have dwelled in darkness, the house of your most holy self is now filled with light. Invite Him in. He who is already there. New in the ways of salvation, know that you shall not saunter into this new world alone. For there are angels to your left and angels to your right. There are angels in front of you and angels behind you. There are angels above you and angels below you. You shall not be left comfortless. Your guide, your teacher, your Savior is within. And together we say, Amen. Thank you, Adam. Adam is adored. I saw that these were kind of good ones, so I'm going to real quickly run through a little bit of stuff here before I go out there. No, I'm not. I'm going to do you first, and then I'll get to these, okay? All right, who, especially since we were just having the conversation we're having tonight, I'm going to give the space in case particularly you have any questions specifically related to the stuff we were talking about. So anybody have any questions or comments or anything before I do this? Okay, maybe I had it right the first time. Okay. One question I have for Marianne revolves around the following: strong feelings of attraction and also jealousy that seem to stem out of the blue, and how to best handle them. I'm a single female, have a male friend who I really like, but I'm not involved with romantically. Recently, in the last year or so, I felt a strong attraction developing. He is seeing someone who he is on and off with. I believe at the moment it's much more than I believe at the moment it's more on, though, than off. I also was seeing someone, but stopped seeing this person a couple of months ago. We know each other through a mutual group for a handful of years. I was taken aback by how jealous I felt to see him with someone a while ago. Not his girlfriend, but just someone who he was dating at the time. It is his girlfriend, whatever. I'm surprised, too, by the intensity of the attraction, especially since he is not really available. He is, however, unusual. I know, I love this. He is, however, unusually sweet and gifted individual. If this makes any sense, I literally felt like I was struck by an extremely strong, energetic force and had been very curious about this whole matter. I am not easily prone to feeling jealous and have simply tried to let it go and certainly not act on it. Just curious about any insight as to why this might be occurring and any other feedback. I don't wish to have any undue tension with him. I very much care for him, even as a friend. Thank you very much. Okay, these things happen, and I believe it is a soul connection. I think those kinds of language are struck, and it's like, whoa, that's Cupid's arrows. But especially since she's a woman, and I'm really a convert to that whole Pat Allen thing. Sophia, he'll come after you if he wants to. And there is no he's not really available. No, he's not available. If he is dating someone, then he is dating someone. Now, in the medieval times, if a woman was interested in a man, she dropped her handkerchief. And that's how he knew that she would be interested. So you can drop your handkerchief, but I would suggest nothing more than that. He's not available. He's with someone else. And the issue is, if he's not available at some point, I really hope for you, we all hope for you, that he feels the same thing you feel. Wouldn't that be wonderful? But right now, sometimes you have a soul relationship with someone. Sometimes this is before there's a physical interaction of any kind. Even let's say you've met someone, and you feel that there's a soul connection, but nothing's happened yet, or maybe the other person's married or something like that. Sometimes you have something going on the soul level that may or may not be able to unfold, that would be right to unfold or whatever on the physical. And also, sometimes when relationships end, remember the Course says only the form is ending. And you say, I can't stop thinking about this person. That's because your mind is joined with that person. So honor it enough. Something happened. I mean, I remember meeting someone once many years ago. I just met this person, and when I saw him with someone, his girlfriend he was living with, I was so jealous I had to leave. Well, I met him again years later, and it all made sense. So sometimes the soul knows something, right? So honor that, but just know but we have to live in this earth, and appropriateness and impeccability and ethics is everything. He is with someone, he's not available, and if he wants you, he'll come and get you. Right? Anybody else have any? Pretty much it. Okay. Hello, Marianne. I have a close friend who is increasingly acting with spiritual superiority since discovering a new religious practice. He is very challenging to be around, narcissistic, and talking with superiority about others who are, in his opinion, not as enlightened as he has become. I find myself getting defensive and put off, but want to remain compassionate. What is the most skillful way to approach my friend? Okay, this is exactly how it works, right? So it's like when people say, I can't stand born-again Christians. I say, why? And the person says, oh, because they're so judgmental. Right? So the issue, what did I say tonight? It's you. It's about you. So the issue is this guy came into this person's life. This is from Hannah. So Hannah, this guy came into your life because this is the place where you can't be like Jesus. Right? Jesus being a person, the Course there's not an exclusive Jesus here, he's not the only one. But the fully self-actualized person would not be bothered by that behavior. The fully self-actualized person would find it almost funny. So the issue isn't their behavior, right? My ego would say, oh, spiritual superiority, just, it's like fingernails on a blackboard. But this is exactly what I was talking about tonight. It's not about him, it's about you. So now, Hannah, I don't know if, as the Course would say, Jesus is part of your problem-solving repertoire, Holy Spirit, whatever it works for you. The Course says that he says in the Bible, I stand in the breach. Or as it says in the Course in Miracles, my mind joined with your mind shines away the ego. So Hannah would say, okay, I know that you're like the internal teacher, the Holy Spirit, you've got it all going on, you're enlightened. He drives me nuts. I think he's spiritually superior. He thinks he's enlightened and the rest of us aren't. I find that very narcissistic, and I'm very annoyed by it. But I've read the Course in Miracles. I get that by definition this is my stuff. So I am willing to see him differently. And then Jesus standing over here, and he goes, okay, I'll take a look. And he sees all the behavior that you just described. Mm-hmm. And then he looks at you and he goes, I like him. Because his vision, the fully self-actualized mind, pierces the veil of illusion. So on the personality level, he's got personality stuff, which, as we said earlier tonight, is to be interpreted as a call for love. So that's really all you have to do. The Holy Spirit will do the rest. If you will have the presence of mind to be able to laugh at yourself at that moment, if you will have the presence of, that's where most of us are. I know I'm at a place where I would still be at a place where that guy would drive me nuts. But I'm also enough of a place where I would pretty much be able to say, Marianne, you're insane right now. Right? So you say, I am willing to see this differently. And then that changes everything. Because that person, first of all, you're being driven nuts by that guy. He feels. So he feels judged by you, which gives his ego more ammunition for him thinking he's more spiritual than you. Because in that moment he is. Or at least you're not doing so well. Does that make sense? So know it's about you. I am willing to see him differently. Okay. Marianne, I'm feeling stuck and despairing. How can I discern my life's purpose? How do I listen to God, for God, trust that what I feel or sense is from God? Crossroads in life, 63, early retirement from teaching, single and lonely for relationship, but stuck there too. Left a woman I truly loved 13 years ago because I thought I should be with a man, still alone, without a primary relationship. I'm stuck on the fence in all areas of my life. How do I find my purpose and move forward with my life and find contentment? Now, the Course in Miracles does not say it's the only way. It does not claim to have a monopoly on truth. But since you're asking me, the answer would be, everything that you talked about is what the Course in Miracles is about. And as you learn who you really are in God's eyes, and you learn that your primary responsibility is to be, as he says, a teacher of God. So I would highly recommend, if you respond to the things that I say, just know that I'm a student of A Course in Miracles, so I would recommend that you take a look at the book and see if you could say, all right, I'm going to do the workbook of the Course for 30 days. If at the end of 30 days this really isn't for you, you'll know it, but it will not have been a waste of your time. And I think it will speed you along the road to the path it is for you. Okay. My name is Eugenia. I'm from Brazil. I've read all your books and have been following your live streams for over a year. Thank you and hello, Brazil. While reading The Course in Miracles, I'm constantly reminded that I shall not judge, that I should help others and understand their faults. My boyfriend is an alcoholic. He is not aggressive, but the excessive drinking bothers me to the point that I feel absolutely no desire to even speak to him. Kind of repulsive. I love this, kind of repulsive. These feelings I have make me feel bad, for I feel I should be helping him, even though I tried. I want to break up, but I'm afraid I'll be acting like an uncomprehending bitch. He is very dependent on our relationship. If I break up with him, this would be the third time, I will be turning my back to a person in need. How would the Course see this? Thank you. So, Eugenia, let me tell you what happened to me many years ago. I was with an addict, and my friends were telling me some stuff about going to Al-Anon. And I said, it's just too much for me right now. I'm really into the Course in Miracles. So I'm going to use the Course, and I'm really going to work through this. About 6 weeks later, I called like a little family meeting of my closest friends, around 4 or 5 people in the room. And I said, okay, This is what I have discovered. This is what I get. And I gave this whole Course in Miracles treatise about what the correct thing to do was. And they all sat there silently, and they all looked at me like this. And then somebody said, you would have gotten that in 5 days at Al-Anon. So the issues, you're never going to find, whether it's Al-Anon or Kabbalah or A Course in Miracles or AA or mystical Christianity, there's one truth spoken in many different ways. But just like Christian Science is metaphysics specifically as it applies to physical healing, the 12 steps are metaphysics specifically applied to the issue of addiction. So, for instance, Eugenia, you would learn at an Al-Anon meeting, for instance, this issue that you could help him. No one gets sober for anyone else. He can only decide to get sober himself. Your quote-unquote helping him is called in AA enabling him. Of course he's repulsive. And you're like babying him through this is your own codependency. And all this stuff that people kind of has become a part of the jargon, and for good reason. And it's kind of like we were talking about with the airplane pilot. Sometimes you don't have to take all the time to figure it out. Just know the certain principles. And if he is an alcoholic, which is a self-diagnosed disease, but if he knows it and you know it and everything, you're just caught in this loop. And the issue at this point is not about his being an alcoholic. The issue is about whether or not you remain in that loop. But it is about knowing you're not serving him, staying there. And no, so am I being a bitch if I say no? Take it from me. If you say no, they will call you a bitch. But the fact that you say no is one of the things that the ego does. If you're so loving, why are you okay with my taking heroin in your house? Or whatever it is, right? So that's just the game. You have to, from your own self, know whether your no or your yes is coming from the Holy Spirit. And the fact that you do not give someone what they want, particularly if they're an addict, the fact that you do not give them what they want may or may not mean that you did the wrong thing. Make sense? Okay, your turn now, because those were the ones from, who's first tonight? Yes, sir. If what? She's got a microphone for you, honey. Okay.
How you doing?
Hi.
So you said something earlier this evening about needing someone to complete you.
Needing someone to complete you.
What if you feel as though you don't need anybody?
You don't need anyone to complete you. That's a good thing.
Okay.
It's like Jerry Maguire when Tom Cruise says to Renee Zellweger, you complete me. And you're like, oh. And for about 10 seconds, oh. And then you go, no, that's so fucked up. Because you do not need anyone to complete you. You are complete. And when you think you need someone to complete you, then what happens is that I need you to behave the way I want you to behave in order for me to feel completed. So it's a terrible pressure to put on someone because God created you complete. So intimate love is not where two emotional invalids are joined at the hip. I remember a woman saying at one of my seminars years ago, well, the way you talk about it, Marianne, we wouldn't even need a man. Why would we even be with them? And I said, because we enjoy them. Now think about it. I mean, there's a sexual need. I mean, that could have moments. But as a general psychological and emotional thing, it is not a workable pattern. But co-creation and play and desire, need gets in the way of desire. Real desire. And also from a woman, there was one of the things Pat Allen says that I think is really brilliant. She says, a man produces into a woman's desire. And that male-female aspect is true in gay relationships as well as straight relationships. There's something about pure desire that is very attractive. Need is experienced by a man as control, which it is. And men are hormonally programmed to not want to do something if he feels a woman is demanding it. And that's really what need is. It's trying to lasso you. But when you aren't coming from that place, but there is an availability to play, then you're at a much higher frequency. Now, are you saying you don't need anyone and you feel that sort of part of what's keeping love at bay in your life? Or you're just saying, what if I don't need anyone?
It's the way I feel now.
It's the way you feel now that you don't need anyone.
But I feel good.
But you feel good. Well, that's great. So either you are in your life at a period, and it may last your life, I don't know, where that's not the path you're on, or you had to take a break, you know, which would be or take a break. And I can assure you this, the fact that you don't feel you need it will put you in a better position, not a worse position, to be totally ready to play once he or she gets here. Okay? Okay. All right. Who's next? Over there. This place is so big. I need one of those little things, you know? Okay, who had your hand up over here? Yes, sir.
So I remember when you were saying to think about our tics.
About what?
Our tics, what we do wrong.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about, I was caught up in who I've affected wrongly from being outwardly in my tic. And I wonder what you would say about going back to those people and apologizing.
That's really an interesting, very good question. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. The atonement is sometimes making the amends is what is called for. And you'll know in your heart. When you were really in that God space, you'll know. It might be a phone call that should have been made 25 years ago. It might be an email or a letter. And it might be something where it either wouldn't be appropriate or you were just being a better person now. Those are the kinds of specifics that you are guided to from within. But the question is very good, and that is always, I had an apology I owed last year, and then Yom Kippur, which is the Jewish Day of Atonement, I started crying. I knew I had to apologize to that person. So when you really get clear with God, sometimes you know you have to. Nobody has anything? Yes, over there. Oh, and over here. Who is closer? You sure have something to say? And then I'll go over there, okay? Okay.
Hi, I have a question about forgiveness, attack thoughts, and vengefulness, globally and personally.
Okay.
And globally, the framework is, for instance, the U.S. gymnastics team and their doctor.
Oh, that's unbelievable.
And then it's, you know, for me personally, someone that's attacked me, and how do I deal with it? And I get to the point of forgiveness. And I've gone through many layers of forgiveness in a couple of years, just through the course, to the point where I can forgive.
Yes.
But I'm caught on, I don't want to see them.
Right.
I don't want any part of it.
Okay.
It's like, I'm done.
Okay.
It's like, part of me is guilty, feels guilty because of that.
Okay.
And I look at the gymnastics, it's like, well, they may be able to forgive this doctor, but why have anything to do with them anymore?
Well, I don't think any of those people will be having anything.
But
let's take the first one first and the second one second. Let's start with the doctor, and I assume you all know, but everybody knows the case to which he is referring. That man will be spending, apparently, the rest of his life in jail. Mm-hmm. So worldly justice is being done. Also, it's extraordinary that these girls have shown up the way they are. It is obviously part of something that's going on this planet. But even without the Me Too movement, I mean, that's such criminal violation. These girls and these women, who are now, some of them who are now women, will heal. And I think the fact that they showed up, the fact that they told their story, the fact that they spoke to the transgressor, the way they did. I thought the judge was fantastic. Which she said to him, you think this is hard for you mentally? This is hard for you mentally after what these girls? So something profound is going on here that the entire world is learning from. The fact that they are now holding accountable the coach. The fact that the Olympic organization is being called on their stuff, what they were willing to not look at. So it's a big passion play. And these girls will be You know, I think it's really important that we not coddle our victimization. These girls many women have been harassed, many women have been assaulted, many men and women have gone through terrible things in life. And there is a way we hold it, knowing that every crucifixion does lead to the resurrection. So don't hold people in place. And you don't want to see people as victims. The fact that you have been victimized doesn't mean that you have to remain a victim. And I think one of the ways that they're getting off the cross is by holding him accountable, is by speaking in court. Something very profound is going on there. And that they get to speak to him, and that the fact that they can know, thank God the court system, of course his transgression is so criminal, of course the court system is, but it's important, justice is important, and they are seeing the law hold him to account. So this is all this will take time. In each of their cases it will be different, but we hold that they will in time. And some of them probably already are healed of that experience and made whole and healed in God. Now, in terms of your own situation, the fact that I forgive you doesn't mean we have to have lunch yet. So the fact that the Course says all who meet will someday meet again until their relationship becomes holy. So ultimately, this person who wronged you, someday, somewhere, I don't know if it's in this lifetime, the Course doesn't say one way or the other. The Course does indicate that someday you're going to be in a totally healed, holy relationship with this person. But it doesn't say it has to be now. And sometimes I can forgive you more easily if you are not in my face. So the fact that you are forgiving someone does not mean, okay, I'm going to meet you Thursday for tea. Not necessarily.
And put it under the rug. Shove it under the rug.
Oh, yeah, no. Yeah. No, forgiveness is a process. As long as you are willing and you're in the process, and what you had indicated, which I can understand, is where you feel, yeah, I've forgiven you. No, I don't, lunch will not happen. Right, and the years will go by or whatever, but if you don't feel it right now, coming from the forgiving place, that's why I was saying you don't have to worry that the Holy Spirit's not going to make you strong and psychologically perspicacious. I mean, no, right now lunch would not serve the process of forgiveness. And sometimes that's why we shouldn't have lunch yet. I'm feeling very forgiving, but I don't feel I'm at a... It's like when you've dated someone or been married to someone and then it takes some time. Don't kid yourself, because you might think you're doing really cool, but if it hasn't been enough time, the triggers could come right back. So the fact that you feel sometimes no personal interaction would not be helpful now is not necessarily unloving. As long as there is a willingness that in the overall scheme of things, you know that they are innocent and so are you. That makes sense? Okay. Yes, ma'am. Hi. Good to see you. And somebody I know is over there. I'm sorry. I'll come right after this. I'll come right over there.
Thank you. Hi, Marianne.
Hi.
Okay, so someone asked you a question about someone feeling superior about spiritual stuff. How do we deal with religiocentrism? Because I feel like that's
what centrism?
Religiocentrism, like when people feel like what they believe is the ultimate truth, and if you don't believe the same thing, then you're some kind of a demon.
Right.
Because I feel like that's been a problem with me. Like, I feel a certain way towards a certain group just because of how they treated me. And I feel like, I don't even know how to put this, but I feel like I'm Catholic and Jewish, but I grew up mostly Catholic. So when I finally left the church, it was like I felt like one of those people on this Scientology thing where they're like, oh, I escaped. Like, that's how I feel. I'm like, I escaped. But when I meet people who are Christian, I always get this like tension built up inside of me, and I keep meeting them, like, because
you feel. So you're saying people who you feel judge you?
Just, I don't have to say anything for them to just kind
of... Well, you know, great evil has been done on this planet. and continues to be done on this planet by people who think they understand God. And if only you did, everything would be cool. It is very unhelpful. And to be honest, there are people who do that in the name of the Course in Miracles, too. And even if it's not, like one of the things I've noticed is now if you're liberal, some right-wingers will call you snowflake. I understand snowflake, right? I mean, it's just like childish name-calling. But we all know what it can feel like to have other people looking down on you for your beliefs. I used to feel it a lot with my work, like I was quote-unquote new age. You know, the issue is always, it's what we were talking about tonight. It's not about them. It's about you. If they are not loving you, see it as a call for love. And if you just practicing the holy instant, dear God, the fact, because when you are defending, the Course in Miracles says a defense is an attack. So if I feel attacked by you and I want to defend, I'm actually just attacking back. So all of this is happening within the veil of illusion, the veil of personality. Who that person is and who you are is beyond the veil. They love you and you love them. And all that's happening on this planet is that they are here to remove the veil, the scales from in front of their eyes. You're here to remove the scale from in front of your eyes. So when you say, dear God, I am willing to see this differently, and amazing things will happen. Amazing things will happen, that they'll say something, or you won't, you know, the issue really isn't, when you pray, like we say here a lot of times, if you're not feeling loved by another person, or you're feeling you're not getting along with the person, often I'll say here, pray for their happiness for 30 days. And then I always say, don't I, that at the end of the 30 days, one of two things will happen. Either they will change, or you won't care. The real issue is not how they're looking at you. The issue is the part of you that thinks they might be right. That's really the issue. The part of you, the issue is you. Because when you are really healed, let them think what they think. Let them think what they think. Does that make sense? I remember I read an article somewhere or heard a story somewhere years ago, and it was talking about paradigm shifts in a culture. And they were using as an example a view of astrology and a view of science. And they were talking about how we had gone from a paradigm where a scientist would be talking to someone who was into astrology. They were just using the science and astrology as an example. So the scientist is talking to the person who's into astrology, and the person who's into and telling and putting down astrology and talking about how it's not scientifically based and all that, and that there was a time when the person who was into astrology would then cower and feel ashamed because the scientist had just felt, I must be stupid. And then the paradigm shift is when the person just thinks, oh, you poor scientist, you just don't understand, and walks away and doesn't care. That's the shift, not in the person who's judging you, but in how you receive it. You don't care that they think that anymore. Yes.
I just had a quick one.
Pardon?
I just had a quick question.
Okay.
So regarding being open and vulnerable, if you're getting to know someone and they're giving the signs of like being closed off and afraid, and it triggers you to do the same thing, how do two people reconcile that?
Okay. Is it a man?
Yeah.
Okay. So you are getting close to someone, and he is giving you signs of being closed off and afraid.
But it comes out as maybe not interested or unclear. So then I pull away, and then when we have a conversation, it was that I wasn't recognizing that he actually cared. So it's just miscommunication.
Okay. Now, wait a minute. He's acting closed off and afraid, makes you withdraw.
Yeah.
Then when you had a conversation about it.
Yes. Like my withdrawing made him feel more.
Oh, please. No. No. It's that Maya Angelou thing, believe a person the first time. Uh-huh. If he's closed off and afraid, he is closed off and afraid.
Okay.
So you're being closed off to that is not necessarily afraid. It could be just healthy.
Yeah.
Because by his showing that he was closed off and afraid, it shows he's unavailable.
Sure.
So the healthy person sees that and just, are you looking for a relationship?
Somewhat, yeah.
Okay, he's closed off and afraid. Is that someone available for a relationship?
No.
Okay, so to go any further along with that dance,
Yeah.
if he, and then it's because, well, he thought, no. I don't know if his bar mitzvah didn't take, or he didn't.
Thank you.
He never got long pants. I don't know. But how old are you?
30.
Would you like children someday?
Yes.
Lose his number.
Okay.
Thank you. Wait, don't take it personally. Okay. And I'm sure he's a lovely person, but that is not available for that interaction. Yes.
Hi. I was just wanted to know your opinion on something. I had over the weekend an ex-girlfriend of mine who was super awesome, super close to me, died.
I'm sorry, sir. I'm not hearing you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Over the weekend, I had a situation. An ex-girlfriend of mine who I was super tight with, just like super awesome girl. She died over the weekend. And she struggled with drugs and alcohol, and for the last 6 months, we basically isolated herself, and she would only talk to me, and she was really adamant that I wouldn't talk to her family or anybody, and I talked to her family on occasion, but she died alone, and yeah, she died alone last week, and long story short, she was found by the police. And I feel totally responsible, but there was nothing I could do. We broke up and she went to several rehabs and it just never stuck, And it's just like, I just feel like I got hit by a car, I'm like, I don't know, it's like, could I do it, it was years of struggle, but to be the last lifeline just feels really crazy.
I'm so sorry. She's died now, right? So at this point, you certainly, there's a lot to think about there. And for those of us who are living and those of us who continue, there's a lot to think about there when she said, don't talk to her family. Sometimes when we do interventions on people, it's when we feel that we are supposed to reach out. I've certainly been in that situation, but she'd put you in a terrible situation by making you promise not to. So at this point, the thing for us to do is to pray for her, to pray for you, to pray for her family, and for all of us to really think deeply about these things. If you are in a situation with someone like that, then I advise you to seek counsel from people who do know about these things within AA and so forth. Seek out advice and counsel from people who have wisdom within that world. Does that make sense? And in the meantime, let's pray for her and for you. What is your name?
Patrick.
Patrick, and what was her name?
Marie.
Marie. Let's pray. And by the way, I want to say one more thing there. Having lost a godson to a drug overdose a little over a year ago, sometimes the family becomes involved and does everything possible, and these things happen. Dear God, we join in praying for Marie and for every other addict, both those who are struggling and those who have succumbed. We pray for Marie, dear God, and we ask that you lift her gently, as we know you already have, to heavenly realms. May her soul be at peace. And for Patrick and Marie's family, send angels to comfort them as well. Tie a golden cord at the heart of Marie and to the heart of Patrick and all those who loved her. That golden cord attesting to the eternal nature of life and love. For whom God hath brought together, nothing and no one can put asunder, not even death itself. Bring comfort to Patrick's heart. May Patrick dwell in awareness that it was Marie's decision. That is the bottom line. It was Marie's choices. And we respect those choices, though they would not have been what we would wish. And may Patrick and her family find peace and comfort, that their lives might be more filled with light and more filled with appreciation, more filled with love for all that is good and true and beautiful, having seen that which is not. May all of them know peace. And so it is together. We all say, amen. All right, someone over here. Oh, okay, hi. Yes, ma'am.
I'm back on the same topic. My daughter is also, I think, an addict, or I am finding out. So I live with anxiety.
You what?
I live with anxiety of my own for so many years. How do I work this through on top of my own anxiety?
Well, Al-Anon has come up twice tonight, and I assume that's for you.
Well, I'm getting help, but I don't know how to spiritually ground myself.
Well, spiritually grounding yourself, there's one answer, no matter what the question. So whether it's the 12 steps or A Course in Miracles, a serious spiritual path is the only answer. It is profoundly, I can't even imagine, to have to accept that a child is going through that, and to accept the limitations of how much we can do for them and what we cannot do for them, what we can choose for them and what we cannot choose for them. So you say you're getting help. I hope that help includes either that you're doing the Course in Miracles, that you are going to Al-Anon meetings, that you are gaining support from a serious spiritual grounding. Is your daughter seeking help?
She's in denial, so I'm working on it. It's my beginning process. I'm scared.
All right. Well, let's pray for her. What is your daughter's name?
Cody.
Cody. Let's pray for Cody. And listen, addiction, whether it's you, whether it's someone else, there are so many different forms of addiction. It could be addiction to food. It could be addiction to alcohol. It could be addiction to drugs. It could be addiction to people, addiction to love. There are all kinds of forms of things that we're addicted to. But we all know the suffering, not only in our own lives, but in the lives of so many people. So let's pray right now. Dear God, we pray for everyone who is caught in a pattern that they feel that they cannot override. A pattern that defeats their own better knowing and self-will. A pattern that seems so strong that it takes hold of their better nature. And they find themselves time and time again at the mercy of the fear within. In some of these cases, dear God, it is literally life-threatening. And so we, in our own lives or in the lives of those we love or people that we don't even know, who we know are struggling in this moment, addiction to something or someone, we pray for Cody. We pray for every addict. And as we do so, dear God, we know that someone, somewhere, people in situations we will never even know of, are somehow finding it in this moment easier to put down that needle, to put down that drink, or even to put down that phone. For whoever they are, we know that you know, dear God, who they are. Help them now. Unbind them. Break the chain that binds them. Deliver them and set them free. And so it is. We say, amen. Now, I want to point out here that the Course in Miracles says, when you pray for a situation, when you work a miracle in a situation through the changing of your own thoughts, you are affecting situations you may never even know about. And remember at the beginning this evening, I talked about how I put on my Facebook page that I had a cold and my throat hurt and I had to work 2 nights in a row. I felt that power coming. I could feel where I assume were hundreds of people sending me that energy. I could feel it. Last night, I was up in the middle of the night to write, and I saw that there had been an earthquake off Alaska, and there was for a while a tsunami warning and then a tsunami watch for the entire west coast of the United States. I don't know if all of you knew that. And just know, I remember when the Fukushima thing happened. I remember the Fukushima thing happened, and I remember got on Facebook and I said, all you girls who do all those ceremonies for the water fairies and things, do it now, right? All of you nature ceremony people, rituals, now. It was so cute, the response, we're on it, Marianne, we're on it. Just know, especially living in the world that we're living in today, if something happens, know that people who are conscious of the power of prayer and meditation and mental energy, whether they see it in religious or secular terms, that's where the world is now. So when you go immediately into prayer and meditation and know that millions of people are. So I think that's a very powerful thing to remember. You know, many of the institutional forces of our world today are under the control of regressive thought forms. But that's not the direction of the consciousness of humanity. Consciousness of humanity is evolving towards a more enlightened place. And we are going through what seems to be the kind of death throes of an old order, and some serious spiritual malfunctioning is arising. But remember the army of light that you're part of. So if you hear something happening, this was true. You know, I used to live in Montecito, California. The horror of those mudslides, the fires in California. You hear about tsunamis or something. Don't just go, oh my God, what's happening, and go into fear. Go into immediate participation with what are millions of people who know, okay, we need to visualize, pray, use all the powers, the internal powers right now. So let's remember that. The Course in Miracles says prayer is the medium of miracles. Okay, okay, back there.
Hi.
Hi.
I wasn't going to ask, but then I thought I'll ask. So my mom unexpectedly went to heaven on Christmas.
Oh, honey, I'm so sorry.
And she was the love of my life. And so I'm feeling, I feel her presence, and I still feel connected. I can hear her voice, but I thought I'd ask you how you stay connected.
Okay.
With those that have moved on.
First of all, Jennifer or John, someone, would you bring this lady Tears to Triumph? Do you have my book, Tears to Triumph? Okay, they're going to bring you one. But this is what the Course in Miracles says. The body is like a suit of clothes. It is not who you are. We are spirits and not bodies. So the Course in Miracles says birth is not the beginning of life, but the continuation of your life. And physical death is not the end of your life, but the continuation of your life. So the Course in Miracles says there is no death. So your mother has dropped her physical body. She is not incarnate now, but the Course in Miracles says your relationship with her is not over. It has merely changed form. So it's like she's still broadcasting, but your set isn't picking up that channel. And as we become an enlightened species, we will all pick up that channel. That's what the resurrection is. That's what it means to transcend death, will mean getting to the point of total realization it doesn't exist. Now, in the meantime, you are in a very human experience of integrating this, and it's called a period of grief. It is only third week in January. She died on Christmas. Now, one of the things I talk about in this book, would somebody bring me that book, please, honey? Oh, thank you, Jennifer. What I talk about in this book is that when I was a child, people understood, like when you heard that someone's family member died, there was much more of a societal understanding. This person will be in grief, and that a year is normal. I mean, before everybody was wearing black all the time, it really stood out that people wore black. You know, I officiated at a funeral just last week. The husband of a girl I was good friends with since I was 5 years old. And it was a very big funeral. A lot of people showed up for his funeral. And I got to tell you, it was nice to see everybody in black. It was kind of a more traditional crowd. But it kind of gave homage to the fact, you know, somebody said to me the other day, whose sister died at the age of 28, just recently, and this girl said to me, but I want to honor her by being happy. I said, right now, honor her by being sad. You honor her with your tears. So right now, your mother was, first of all, I've lost my mother. There is, even if she hadn't been your best friend, it's so enormous. I remember thinking when my mother died, I remember the day after thinking, I didn't know you could be this sad. And she was the love of your life. So right now, allow yourself to be in the enormity of the grief while you know that she is still here, while you know that she's talking to you. And your tears and your grief does not mean you're not accepting that. It just means that you're human and you're integrating that. Now, I promise you, as someone who has lost my mother, this phase will pass. And she will become a happy presence. But right now, you're not there. And that is understandable. And so you are allowing yourself to be in grief and surrounding yourself with people who can respect that. And don't countenance people who want you to rush through it. Do you know what I'm saying? This is, you know, there are people today who say, your mother died 2 months ago, aren't you over it yet? The healthy answer is no. And it probably will be a while. And you don't even want to be around people that cannot attest. We don't know. We have so peripheralized in our society. We just try to put death away so that we have withered. Our musculature for navigating this phase has withered. Too often we don't know how to be there for each other. You know, sometimes I was with someone and another friend their mother had died or their father or something, and I said to my friend, oh no, it's his mother or his father, and I said, why didn't you say something? And he said, well, I thought I shouldn't bring it up. Shouldn't bring it up? Well, what? They're not thinking about it? You know, it's very, you say to someone, my condolences, I'm so sorry about your loss. You speak to it. You acknowledge it. And that's how we're there for each other. So I know I express, you know, on behalf of everyone in the room, My condolences for your having lost your mother. And if you would like us to say a prayer for her, we certainly can. What is your name? Kathleen. And what was your mother's name? Maureen. Kathleen and Maureen. Two Irish people? Yes. Yes, of course. So you're Kathleen, she was Irene. I'm sorry? Maureen. Kathleen and Maureen. Okay. Anybody else had your hand up tonight? Yes, you did, ma'am? Okay. Could you give me that name? Mark, and that's just for the prayer list. Could you put Mark in for the prayer list, and also Kathleen and Maureen, and we will say that prayer. And there's one more over there. Okay, real quickly. Yes, ma'am? Oh, for the prayer list? Yeah. Can you guys come here so that I don't have to yeah, thank you. Okay, so you'll get that name, please? Okay, and there was somebody who had you, yes, was it just you, Jennifer? Okay, you, sir? Jennifer, yes, sir. Okay.
Hi. I wanted to say that I have stopped drinking for 2 years, and I appreciate so much in your talk about the demons, addictive demons. And I started feeling that, oh my God, I've got that one and that one and that one still. And you helped me realize that it can blend into the ego. And I have such fear for your losses, and I have such empathy and prayer with everybody for your losses. For me, I'm rejoicing because I understand more and more of how powerful the ego mind is in playing into even the part of accepting where I am at this point in my life. And I feel very fortunate to identify that I can connect quickly to the goodness in somebody. It's my ultimate high.
And that is your own salvation. That's the thing. We are generous out of self-interest. I cannot connect to the goodness in me without connecting to the goodness in you. And the Course in Miracles says, that's what it means in the Course when it says heaven is entered 2 by 2. And heaven is an awareness of our oneness. I cannot be, that's the core of the Course. I cannot see guilt in you and feel peace. Because if I see guilt in you, I'm fortifying my belief that I'm guilty. And if I'm fortifying my belief that I'm guilty, I cannot be at peace. And then my ego says, no, I'll be at peace when you change. And the Course says, no, you'll be at peace when you see that how this person is how they are, love them, and release them to whatever they are. Does that make sense?
Oh, very much so.
Okay.
The ego is insidious. It will take out its sharpest knives, its heaviest artillery to defend against its death.
Yeah, but as the Course would say, there would be no savior if there were no need for one. So the Course says the ego is suspicious at best and vicious at worst. And that's why I said tonight earlier, we spend so much time in our culture today analyzing darkness. We don't spend enough time devoting to the light, worshiping the light. Remember, there is nothing outside yourself. So when you worship God, you're not worshiping something outside yourself. You're worshiping that which is within, leaning into that. And Bob Dylan's song, you're gonna have to serve somebody. It might be the devil, it might be the Lord. You're gonna have to serve somebody. You're gonna lean one way or the other. And if you don't lean into God, you are going to lean into neurotic patterns. So if you don't lean into love, you're going to lean into fear. So the spiritual path is about, the non-spiritual path is about trying to dismantle darkness. The spiritual path is about embracing light in the presence of which darkness cannot stand. Does that make sense? Okay, Jennifer, very quickly. And then we've got to go because we're late tonight. I'm sorry.
Thank you very much. You mentioned before spiritual grounding, the importance of spiritually grounding yourself. And it happens, I don't think anything is random, that earlier today I was discussing grounding with someone. Before you came into my life in the Course in Miracles and all that, I had about 25 years, starting in India, of Buddhist stuff. Okay. And the word grounding was very big in my spiritual upbringing, and the way I either that it was explained to me or that I interpreted it perhaps wrongly, everything changed when you came around, but the way I always heard it or was interpreted it, it made it seem almost like, you're grounded, go to your room. Like it's so important to ground. It's so important to ground, come down. Don't be like Icarus and get, go up to this,
Right.
Don't feel the ecstasy of joy and all that.
Okay.
And I wonder if you would be willing, from a Course in Miracles standpoint, to explain your understanding of the importance of grounding.
Well,
because I've understood it incorrectly, I believe.
So when the Course in Miracles, for instance, talks about Jesus, it says he lived on the earth but thought the thoughts of heaven. When the Jew wears the Star of David, or the Christian wears the cross, both the cross and the Star of David are visual symbols for the intersection of the horizontal plane and the vertical plane. That's what we want to be. We want to be embodied. We want to be, the Course in Miracles talks about how practical it is. We want to be embodied. We want to be grounded people. We want to be living on the earth. We want to be healthy in body and spirit. And the place of consciousness that we're seeking is where we are in our bodies, but thinking the thoughts of heaven, which means an awareness of our oneness. Now, if I'm seeing guilt in you, what is that bad for, among other things? My body. Because every thought of lovelessness is also an attack on my body. Anytime that I'm in a phase in life experience where I'm attached to something that is not the spiritual truth of a situation, I'm actually putting myself at odds with my own body. So ultimately, the path of your body and the path of your spirit are aligned by nature. When you get out of your spiritual alignment, it throws you out of your physical alignment. Being in physical alignment helps your spiritual alignment. Being in spiritual alignment helps your physical alignment. Yoga, of course, is a perfect path of the intersection and the interweaving. Yoga is very much about that. You can sort of feel how the body and the spirit and the body. So the Course is, and like I said, it says a few times in the Course, this is a practical course. So this is not about avoiding the experience of our humanity. And the Course in Miracles says the body is a beautiful lesson in communion until communion is. Before we say the final prayer, I want to say thank you for being here, and I'm honored that you're here. I want to remind you all I will be with Attorney General Schneiderman tomorrow night at ABC at 7 o'clock. That will not be live streamed, guys. Sorry about that one. We are going to begin our final prayer tonight, praying with Kathleen and her prayer, and a prayer of healing with her mother. If anyone else has lost a loved one, then I hope that you will, and I know that you will be using this prayer for yourself as well. Then we will enter into the rest of the list and say our final prayer for the evening. Dear God, we join with Kathleen in placing her grief and sorrow in your hands. It feels overwhelming to her now. We know, dear God, that her mother, Maureen, is held in your arms. And we pray that you tie a golden cord in Maureen's spirit and tie it at the other end to Kathleen's heart. And Jesus himself places his hand upon this cord. And thus we see the eternal nature of life and love, for whom God himself has brought together, cannot be put asunder, not even by death itself. Open Kathleen's inner eye, dear God, that she might see the non-reality of death. Send angels to minister unto her at this time of her agony. Aid her, protect her, and guide her as she navigates this sorrowful valley. Send to her the people and experiences that shall bear witness with love and compassion until the day of her new dawn. We pray for Anthony, Chris, Marianne, and Nicholas, for Sierra and Aaron, for Tamara and Joe and Tiffany, for Sue, for Eden, for Junior, for JD, Fred and Tavia, Dominic, Jennifer, Judith and Peter, for Marjorie, for Mark, and for Denise. All of these, dear God, need your miracles. May your Holy Spirit come upon them, release them from their torment, give them comfort, healing, repair, and peace. Dear God, we place in your hands the agony of all sentient beings. We place in your hands the state of our world. We place in your hands the state of our earth. We place in your hands the state of our countries. And we pray, dear God, that a great wave of love and peace come upon all humanity. May there be a great turning of the heart. And may we become, dear God, the people that you would have us be, that we might do as you would have us do. And now go forth in confidence and go forth in peace. For there are angels to your left and angels to your right. There are angels in front of you and angels behind you. There are angels above you and angels below. There is a path of light that God has already paved before you for your life. Seek to walk within the space of that light, that understanding. And if at any moment you are confused, you are in fear or doubt, put your hand in front of you as would a small child, seeking the guidance of an elder brother who will take your hand and put you back on the path. He will stay with you there should you request it. This is no idle fantasy. He is here. And so it is. Together we say, amen. And everyone, I have to say, I have a correction and apology to make. When I told you lose his number, that was glib, and I just got in that prayer, I have to say. I made a mistake when I said that. You don't necessarily have to lose your number. God will tell you whether or not to lose his number. So I was correct with the principle, but I'm sorry I was incorrect with the judgmental attitude. Sorry, sometimes I get it wrong. Thank you so much. Good night.